Thank you for taking the time to listen to the story. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our channel. We appreciate it and thank you in advance. Please leave the name of the city you're listening from in the comment section below. It helps us see our reach in the community. Now, let's start the story. Logan tightened the strap of his running watch and tapped the play icon on his phone. Music flooded his ears, pulsing through expensive earbuds designed to block any distractions. The early light offered a subtle glow over a quiet suburban street. It was perfect weather for a morning run. There was no traffic, no voices, no interruptions, only his heartbeat, his breath, and the steady percussion of his feet hitting the pavement. A leaning sedan perched half on, half off the curb in the distance. Its crumpled hood and shattered windshield suggested a brutal collision. Logan glanced at it but did not slow down. No sirens approached, and there was no police presence or gawkers. Perhaps a drunk driver from the night before, someone taken away already, was leaving the wreck to wait for a tow truck. Logan felt mild concern but pressed on. This run mattered more than a mystery on four wheels. The smell of gasoline lingered in the still air. Logan inhaled through his nose and exhaled through his mouth, maintaining a smooth rhythm. A dog's frantic barking rose in the background, muffled by the upbeat track pumping into his ears. No need to worry about a barking dog. Suburbs always contained a chorus of barking. This one sounded desperate, though, furious and high-pitched. Logan pushed harder, increasing his pace and feeling warmth bloom in his calves. An old woman stood on a porch nearby, arms waving, mouth open wide. Her voice did not penetrate the music. Panic twisted her expression, eyes bulging, hair disheveled. She seemed to shout something urgent. Logan acknowledged her presence with a slight tilt but kept moving. Perhaps the poor woman needed help, but this was no time to stop. His run required focus. He planned a certain route, distance, and personal record to break. A faint metallic taste touched the back of his throat. He ran harder. Broken glass covered a portion of the sidewalk near another driveway. Sunlight hit those shards, producing tiny sparks of white brightness. Logan lifted his knees higher, clearing the danger and landing cleanly on smooth concrete. The movement felt effortless, just another obstacle conquered. A strange sound drifted through his earbuds between the beats of the music, something like muffled screams. He removed one earbud slightly, hoping to confirm the noise. An unmistakable and guttural roar rumbled somewhere out of sight. No explanation came to mind. Possibly a television at full volume inside a home. Logan decided to keep both earbuds in place and continue. It was best not to lose momentum. Legs pumping, he turned a corner, aiming toward the forest trail on the neighborhood's edge. Several houses with shattered windows lined the block. No screams reached Logan's ears now, only his playlist. The smell of something rotten drifted through the morning air, perhaps an overturned trash bin or roadkill. He wrinkled his nose and pressed forward. The transition from suburban pavement to forest trail always felt like passing through a portal. One moment, structured lawns and tidy driveways. The next moment, nature reclaiming territory. Tall pines and oaks flanked a narrow dirt path. A cool hush replaced the faint hum of the distant freeway. Logan loved this section. It was peaceful, usually filled with birdsong and the rhythmic crunch of his steps on the earth. Today, no birds sang. Branches sagged, leaves remained unmoving, and air remained unnaturally still. Logan's breath sounded louder than usual without suburban background noises. The music inside his ears remained steady, offering comfort. Feet striking the dirt, arms swinging at his sides, he focused on the form. Good posture, straight back, forward lean just enough to maintain speed. His heart rate rose. A shape flickered at the edge of his peripheral vision. Something pale and stumbling between mossy trunks. Logan glanced over, spotting a figure draped in tattered clothing. Possibly a hiker who fell, or a drunk who wandered off during the night. The figure lurched forward in a halting pattern. Logan considered stopping, but no apparent calls for help reached him. The music drowned any subtle pleas. He decided to pass quickly and continue, trusting that more precise signals would appear if someone needed assistance. The figure turned slightly, revealing a distorted face, jaw slack, and sunken eyes. Logan's stomach tightened. Something about that face triggered primal unease. Pale skin, dark stains on the cheeks, lips parted in a silent moan. A passing thought, perhaps a homeless person with severe illness. Logan increased speed, wanting distance. The path curved upward, offering a slight incline. Strong quads and trained lungs welcomed the challenge. No reason to worry about strangers in the woods. This morning's run was supposed to release stress, not create it. Feet thumped in a familiar cadence. Inhale 2 counts, exhale 2 counts. Music throbbed pleasantly. A soft groan drifted from somewhere in the undergrowth. Logan spotted another figure stepping onto the trail. This one limped, head jerking at odd angles. Torn clothing revealed wounds crusted with something dark. No attempt to speak or acknowledge Logan's presence, just a slow, anguished shuffle toward him. Fear flickered in Logan's chest. Something very wrong filled this forest. He pushed forward, heart pounding not just from exertion now, but from a dawning sense that something nightmarish had taken shape. The smell of decay rose like a wall. Logan fought the urge to vomit. A desperate need to escape seized him. The route out of the forest would lead back to the city. Familiar streets provide clarity. Someone would explain this madness. The forest exit beckoned. Shafts of sunlight broke through branches, illuminating a small clearing. Logan sprinted for that gap, passing another hunched body leaning against a tree trunk. No words formed in his mind, only confusion and growing dread. Music provided no comfort now. He ripped both earbuds out and stuffed them in a pocket. Exposed ears picked up faint screams carried on the wind. Moans and shrieks mingled into a horrifying chorus. His feet pounded into the clearing. The city lay just ahead, rooftops visible through thinning foliage. He burst from the forest, lungs searing, legs shaking slightly from adrenaline. Emerging onto a residential street usually brought relief. Today, it brought chaos. A twisted car lay overturned near a street lamp. Flames flickered at the edges of a smashed hood. Bodies sprawled on the pavement, motionless or twitching. Screams tore at the air. A man sprinted toward Logan, eyes wide with terror, arms flailing. Something latched onto that man's leg, some creature with blood-smeared lips and clouded eyes. The man stumbled, shrieking until his voice cracked. The creature dragged him down, biting into flesh with a sickening crunch. Logan's mind spun. This could not be real. Cities did not harbor monsters that ripped at living flesh. Attempting to rationalize the scene felt impossible. He backed away, searching for a route through the madness. Another shriek rose from behind a parked truck. A woman slammed her fist on a windshield, trying to break inside. Her hair was matted with gore, her teeth bared. She snarled instead of speaking. A second figure tackled her from the side. Both forms tumbled out of sight, producing sounds of tearing fabric and wet ripping. Logan's stomach lurched. Heat flushed his face. Fear rattled his limbs. He stood frozen, heart hammering in his chest. Something moaned closer to his position. A shape shuffled from a nearby driveway, head tilted at a sick angle, left arm dangling from a torn shoulder socket. The figure's mouth opened, revealing blackened gums and chipped teeth. An instant passed in silence before the creature lunged forward, arms extended, groaning louder. Logan bolted. His legs complied without hesitation. He dashed past a mailbox lying on its side, past a bicycle twisted into a knot of metal and rubber. Screams and howls surrounded him. Fires crackled in the distance, smoke drifting upward in dark plumes. A useless search began in his mind for any sign of authority. Police, firefighters, medics. Only panicked faces and twisted bodies appeared. A neighbor slammed a front door on a group of pale attackers. Fists and teeth scraped the wood, splinters flying. The door gave way and muffled shrieks followed. A realization struck Logan like a hammer blow. This was not a random act of violence. Something deeper had infested the city, something that had turned people into these shambling horrors, something that spread quickly. There was no time to understand the cause. Survival took priority. A group of survivors sprinted across the street, carrying makeshift weapons. One clutched a tire iron, and another held a kitchen knife. Logan tried to reach them, hoping for solidarity and instructions or guidance. His shout of "Wait!" vanished into the chaos. The group disappeared around a corner. A moment later, a chorus of terror and snarling, silence, then slow, dragging footfalls. No sign of help there. Logan ducked into a narrow alley. Trash bins stood overturned, reeking of rot. Vermin scurried between heaps of refuse. The tight space provided a temporary respite from the main street. His breath rasped in his throat, sweat running into his eyes. He wiped a forearm across his brow, blinking away the sting. Another scream from the street urged him onward. He stumbled through the alley, shoes squishing in something unidentifiable. At the far end of the passage, bright light from a blazing car forced him to squint. Heat pressed against his face. The alley opened onto another street. Bodies littered the asphalt in tangled heaps. Some bodies twitched. Others crawled on elbows, gnawing at whatever lay in reach. A figure slammed into Logan's shoulder, nearly knocking him over. A man with wide, terrified eyes, stubble on his chin, clothes stained with crimson. The man shouted incoherently, grabbed Logan's arm, and tried to pull him along. Logan resisted, panic snapping through him. The man babbled nonsense, voice cracking. Then a shape with ragged clothing lunged from a doorway, sinking teeth into the man's neck, eliciting a guttural wail, blood sprayed. Logan recoiled, stumbling away, heart pounding like a jackhammer. No logic or pattern emerged from this terror. Logan could not guess the source of this plague. The city burned and screamed. Creatures once humans tore apart neighbors. Families shrieked inside locked homes, windows shattering under relentless assault. Logan had only one option: keep running. That instinct, honed on these daily jogs, now served a darker purpose. Escape, outrun, survive. He sprinted along the sidewalk, leaping over prone forms, avoiding reaching hands. One lunging figure in a torn office suit brushed fingertips against Logan's arm, smearing something foul. Logan yanked free, pushing harder, lungs burning. Another corner turned, and another street revealed more horror. No help anywhere, no sirens, no rescue. A store window offered a reflection. Logan glimpsed his own face, twisted with fear, eyes wild. This morning's run gear, light shorts, running shoes, moisture-wicking shirt, looked absurd in the apocalypse. He longed for armor, weapons, anything to fight back. Only empty hands and strong legs. He decided to use what he had. Keep moving. No monster could catch him if he never stopped. A pile of rubble blocked one route. A collapsed building corner spilled bricks and twisted metal. Logan veered down another street. Rotting figures clustered near a stalled bus, pressing inward, feeding on those trapped inside. Screams leaked through shattered windows. Logan averted his gaze, bile rising in his throat. He needed higher ground or safer shelter. Somewhere away from this chaos. A taller building with a roof access is possible. Maybe an abandoned car still running. Some sign of an organized response. He spotted a fire escape ladder hanging from a 3-story building. The alley below it is cluttered with broken crates. Could he climb up and wait it out on a rooftop? He rushed into that alley, panting hard, scanning for movement. The ladder hovered a few feet too high. He pulled a crate into place, climbing onto it. The metal rungs felt cool under his sweaty palms. Something shuffled on the other end of the alley. A moan echoed against brick walls. Logan scrambled upward, forcing trembling legs and arms to comply. One rung at a time, rising over the madness. Reaching the rooftop, he hauled himself onto tar paper and gravel. The city is spread out below. Fires raged in several blocks, smoke drifting into a brightening sky. Screams carried upward in irregular bursts. Streets teemed with figures lurching and lunging, chasing scattered survivors. There was no natural pattern to this horror. It appeared widespread, immediate, and unstoppable. Logan fell to his knees, breathing hard, his heart racing from more than exertion. The morning began with a perfect plan, a routine run, a personal record, and a peaceful start to the day. Now, an unimaginable nightmare consumed the world. There would be no easy explanation, no quick rescue, only a new reality that demanded endurance, speed, and cunning. He stared at the horizon. There were no helicopters, police sirens, or organized evacuation, just distant cries and pillars of smoke. He had outrun the immediate threats, for now, perched above the chaos. The isolation offered time to think and gather courage. His running had given him a head start, but not a solution. Soon, he would have to descend and face whatever came next. Logan closed his eyes and tried to slow his breathing. The run ended on a rooftop under a rising sun, city streets infested with the undead. Survival would require something beyond physical fitness, yet he still had his legs, lungs, and the drive to keep moving. In a world gone mad, momentum might be the only salvation. Logan clutched the railing and let himself breathe for just a second. Only a moment, nothing more. The building's stairwell smelled like stale urine, sweat, and something coppery he dared not identify. 20 flights down. 20 flights between him and the street. With each step, his quads burned a fire that started when he first hit the pavement outside. He removed one earbud, the left one, just for an instant. The raw noise of the world slammed into him. Screaming, pounding feet, that awful guttural moan that seemed to come from too many throats at once. He jammed the bud back in and turned up the volume, letting Christopher Cross's Sailing offer a cruel, ironic lullaby. The smooth chords and gentle voice contrasted sickeningly with the chaos below. He descended fast, taking the steps 2 at a time, breathing through his nose and ignoring the stabbing in his calves. 3 flights down, a door burst open. He froze mid-step, heart hammering. A man, bare-chested, covered in scratches, staggered into the stairwell. The man's eyes were wide with terror, hair matted to his skull with sweat and blood. He raised a hand as if to beg Logan for help. Still, something yanked him back through the doorway before Logan could even consider intervening. The door slammed shut so hard it sent an echo up the shaft. A muffled shriek followed, then a sound like wet rags being torn. Logan forced himself to move again. This city was a slaughterhouse now, and empathy was a luxury no one could afford. 15 flights left. Footsteps thundered below. He caught a glimpse of 3 figures barreling upward, a man and 2 women, all filthy and panicked. They didn't look infected, at least not yet. They rushed past him, panting curses, ignoring him completely. A few seconds later, he heard them encounter something above, a scuffle, screams. Logan didn't look back. Upwards meant nowhere. He needed to get out, and down was the only way. He stuck to his path, shoulders tense, ears filled with that gentle 80s tune that felt maddeningly out of place. 10 flights left. The door on this landing lay half open. In the hallway beyond, a zombie, there was no other word for it, dragged itself across the carpet. Its legs were gone below the knee, leaving a trail of gore. It clawed at the ground, pulling itself forward inch by inch, head lolling, mouth opening and closing on empty air. Logan looked away and kept going. He couldn't help anyone now, not even that pitiful creature that had once been a person. All he could do was survive. 5 flights left. Another door banged somewhere below. He could smell smoke drifting up the stairwell. The building might be on fire. Why not? Everything else had gone to hell. He gripped the rail tighter and let the music guide him, eyes fixed downward. On the final turn, he nearly tripped over a body curled on the landing. It was a young woman, maybe early 20s, wearing a torn denim jacket. Her throat had been torn out. She stared sightlessly at the ceiling. At the sound of his footfalls, she twitched violently, her body seizing into a new unholy life. Logan kicked out instinctively, catching her shoulder. She snapped at the air, teeth clicked, jaws working hard to find flesh. He sidestepped her and sprinted the last few steps, refusing to look back. He reached the lobby door, shoved it open with his shoulder, and burst into daylight. Outside, the main street had grown worse, if that was even possible. The city's heart pumped horror through every block. Cars zigzagged, spinning off the road, climbing curbs, smashing into mailboxes and newspaper dispensers. People fled in every direction, some screaming, some silent, their eyes hollow. Zombies, he could call them nothing else, lunged at anything that moved. Blood-streaked windows, doors, entire storefronts. Logan's eyes darted over the scene, trying to find a path through the madness. He shoved his earbuds tighter and ran onto the sidewalk, weaving around a toppled motorcycle. Sailing drifted into a soothing guitar bridge. Perfect. Just perfect. His home was roughly 5 miles away. Under normal circumstances, that was child's play. He could run 5 miles in under 35 minutes on a good day. But today meant dodging more than potholes and pedestrians. Today meant dodging the end of the world. He pushed forward, calves already burning from the frantic descent in the stairwell. He passed an alleyway and forced himself not to look, but peripheral vision betrayed him. Inside the alley, 2 zombies pinned a man against a chain-link fence. They snapped at his neck, and the man's screams broke momentarily into Logan's consciousness, seeping past the music. Logan clenched his jaw and surged onward. There would be no heroes today. A siren wailed somewhere behind him, then cut off abruptly. A taxi crunched into a lamppost, sending sparks flying. The driver, either mad or infected, flung himself out and took off running on all 4s, a twisted shape barely human. Logan leaped over broken glass and sprinted around a sedan that spun in circles, driverless. He tried to ignore the pattern forming around him. More of those things, those creatures, were appearing every minute. The city bled humans. The ratio shifted with every block. Another half-mile down, he spotted a 7-Eleven store with its doors wide open. There were shrieks from inside, but he needed water. Sweat plastered his shirt to his skin, and salt stung his eyes. He couldn't make it home dehydrated. Ducking inside, he found a scene of chaos. Looters shoved each other, raiding shelves. A clerk's apron lay crumpled on the floor, smeared with something dark. Behind the register, a woman's body twitched, trying to rise despite a gaping hole in her abdomen. He didn't wait to see what she became. Logan darted between two fighting customers, one swinging a pipe wrench, and snatched a water bottle from the coolers. A man lunged at him, eyes wild, maybe desperate for supplies. Logan twisted away, feeling the man's fingernails rake his shoulder. He didn't drop the water. He kicked out behind him, felt contact with a shin or knee, and sprinted into daylight again. No time to pay, no one to pay, even if he wanted to. Outside, a truck swerved onto the sidewalk, scattering a knot of shrieking survivors. Logan flattened himself against a wall, hugging a brick facade as metal roared by inches from his face. The truck slammed into a utility pole and burst into flame, thick black smoke curling into the sky. Without hesitation, Logan turned and kept running. Another mile behind him, only 4 to go. He sipped the water as he ran, careful not to waste it. He needed every drop. The music shifted to another track in his playlist, the Bee Gees' Stayin' Alive, something he'd downloaded ages ago, disco genre. How absurd that these tracks now accompanied screams and sirens. He tried to tune out reality and focus on the pavement, on not getting caught by the grasping hands that seemed to lurk at every intersection. A block ahead, a group of people tried to fight back. They formed a circle, wielding kitchen knives, broom handles, and a frying pan. They'd cornered 3 zombies against a car. The undead lashed out, but the group pressed forward. One survivor, a heavyset man in a stained tank top, swung a hammer. The blow connected with a zombie's skull, sending brain matter spraying across the windshield. The zombie still twitched, jaw working, until a second blow finished it. Another survivor speared a creature through the eye with a broken mop handle. The last of the trio lunged clumsily, trying to bite, until a woman in jeans and a ripped blouse shoved it under the car's frame, stomping down on its head repeatedly. Bone cracked. The survivors yelled in triumph, but that shout died quickly when twice as many zombies appeared behind a van. Logan watched their faces register despair. He turned away and kept going, leaving them to their fate. Exhaustion clawed at his legs. His lungs burned. He took another careful sip of water, counting the blocks. He knew this city well. He'd trained for marathons here, run early morning loops that passed museums, parks, and office towers. Now those landmarks were half collapsed, windows shattered, corpses strewn around like grisly decorations. He passed another alley and glimpsed a lone zombie feasting on someone's arm. He snapped his gaze forward again, refusing to let it slow him down. Cars honked and collided. A hysterical woman clung to Logan's arm, screaming something about her children. Logan tried to shake her off. She wouldn't let go, nails digging into his forearm. He wrenched free, half shoving her away. She staggered back and he felt a stab of guilt. But in that moment, 3 zombies lunged at her. She screeched, and Logan forced his legs to keep moving. He was no savior. Soon, he recognized a strip of shops, a bakery, a barber, and a tiny bookstore. He was closing in on his home turf. His building was the tallest in the city, a sleek high-rise that gleamed in normal times. He looked up, trying to spot it over the smoke and haze. There, rising above the chaos, its upper floors catching the sunlight. Seeing it gave him a jolt of adrenaline. Just a few more miles. He turned down a side street. Fewer cars here, but more bodies. Some simply lay still, others crawled, half-transformed horrors that moaned softly. He hurdled a corpse, skidded around a broken dumpster, and nearly slipped on spilled cooking oil from a toppled food cart. He regained balance and kept going, breathing hard. His watch beeped softly, registering his distance. He still wore it, habit and a desperate grasp for normalcy. The watch told him he'd covered nearly 3 miles from the building he'd escaped earlier. 2 more to go. A roar erupted to his left. A hulking zombie, taller and broader than most, lumbered out of a smashed restaurant window. Its jaw dangled crookedly, one eye missing. It swung its arms wildly, furious and strong. Logan ducked low, dodging a swipe that could have broken his neck. He felt the wind of that swing against his hair. Without thinking, he countered with a shove, just enough to unbalance the creature. It stumbled forward. Logan scooped up a loose metal pipe from the ground and slammed it into the back of its knee. With a sickening crack, the leg buckled. The creature fell face first into shards of glass. It struggled, moaning. Logan didn't look back, let it stay down. He couldn't waste time finishing it off. Another half-mile. He could see familiar territory now. A bank building he knew by name, a street corner where he'd often paused to stretch. Today, a burning ambulance lay flipped on that corner, and a crowd of zombies circled something inside, trying to claw it open. He took a detour around a parked SUV, careful not to draw their attention. His legs screamed for mercy. Every part of him ached. He forced another sip of water, almost gone. He hadn't dared stop since leaving that first building's rooftop. Stopping meant death. He could rest once he reached his apartment, barricade himself in, and figure out the next step. Maybe call someone, if phones still work. He doubted it. The world seemed to have ended in a matter of hours. Out of control, a minivan careened down the street, slamming into lampposts and newspaper boxes. It hit a group of zombies with a wet crunch. The driver leaned on the horn, eyes wide and staring. As Logan sprinted by, the driver met his gaze for one chilling second, a look of pure hysteria, and then sped off, sideswiping a parked truck. 1 more mile. The high-rise dominated the skyline. Its once pristine lobby would offer some respite. He could find a way to barricade himself in his apartment. He fantasized about locking the door, turning on the shower, washing off sweat and blood, finding something to eat, and collapsing onto the couch. He also tried not to think about the possibility that the infection might have reached his building. The thought made his heart thunder. He crossed an intersection clogged with cars and bodies. A policeman's corpse slumped over the hood of a squad car, radio crackling with static. Zombies circled around, unsure if there was anything left worth eating. Logan held his breath and skirted the melee. He nearly fell over a severed arm lying on the crosswalk. He righted himself and kept going. 50 yards later, he reached the front of his building, or what was left of it. The glass doors and window panes were shattered, leaving jagged shards along the frame. Blood smeared across the lobby floor, and several bodies in business attire lay still and silent, at least for now. He stepped inside cautiously, ears straining despite the music still playing softly in his ears. A half-chewed torso near the reception desk twitched. Its head turned slowly, cloudy eyes fixed on Logan. Logan crouched and grabbed a piece of broken wood from the lobby furniture, about the size of a dagger. As the torso dragged itself forward, he aimed carefully. He jammed it into its skull, feeling resistance and a sickening give. The creature went limp. He pulled out his earbuds, letting silence and horror wash over him thoroughly. The music had been a shield, but now he needed his senses sharp. The elevators were dead, and the doors on the lobby level were half open, revealing a metal shaft. No way up there. Stairs were the only option. 50 floors on foot after everything he'd endured. He swallowed hard, muscles trembling at the thought. But he had no choice. He headed for the stairwell door, which hung off a single hinge. It squeaked loudly as he nudged it open. The smell inside hit him like a physical blow. Blood, sweat, and mold. The emergency lights flickered, and moans echoed up and down the shaft. He gripped the railing and began to climb. 4 flights up, he encountered his first obstacle. A zombie blocked the landing, swaying side to side. Its suit jacket was torn, and its neck bent at the wrong angle. It lunged. Logan reacted instantly. He raised his makeshift wooden blade, already slick with gore, and swiped at its face. The wood caught the thing's cheek, tearing it open. Hardly a killing blow. The zombie lunged again. Logan backpedaled, feeling the railing press into his spine. He switched tactics, dropped low and kicked at its knee. The knee popped, and the creature fell forward. Logan brought the shard down on the back of its skull, shattering it like a rotten fruit. Panting, he wiped his face with his hand and continued upward. Another 10 floors, and his legs shook uncontrollably. Each step felt like lifting concrete blocks. He needed rest, but rest meant vulnerability. Below him, shuffling footsteps echoed. Something followed, maybe drawn by the noise. He tried to stay quiet. Every floor presented new horrors. Blood spatter on walls, gnawed limbs on the steps. Twice he had to step over bodies that hadn't reanimated, thankfully. Once, a zombie clung to the railing above, reaching down at him. He flattened himself against the opposite wall, heart in his throat, and slipped by. He was lucky it didn't drop onto him. Floor by floor he climbed. 20 floors in, sweat poured from every pore. He took his shirt off and tied it around his head to keep sweat out of his eyes. 30 floors up, his breathing came in ragged gasps. He'd found a metal rod, maybe from broken building equipment, on a landing and used it as a weapon, leaving the scrap wooded blade behind. The rod proved helpful when another zombie lurched out from a doorway. Logan jabbed it in the throat, pushing the thing back, then slammed the rod down on its skull until it stopped moving. His arms felt like rubber. Everything hurt. 40 floors. He was so close. The building creaked ominously. He wondered if the fire spread somewhere below. He didn't smell smoke yet. That was something. The silence of these upper floors unnerved him. No moans, no shuffling, just the distant roar of the dying city outside. At the 45th floor, he leaned against the wall and listened. No sounds of pursuit. He allowed himself 5 seconds of rest, 5 seconds of precious stillness to gulp air and calm his pounding heart. Then he moved on, pushing toward his apartment on the 50th. At last he reached his floor. The corridor stretched before him, dim emergency lighting casting everything in a sickly glow. His apartment door stood at the far end. Logan swallowed hard, every nerve on edge. The hall was littered with debris, shredded mail, a fallen lampshade, broken picture frames. His neighbor's door hung open, and something dark stained the threshold. He avoided looking inside. At his door, he raised his watch to the keyless pad. "Please work, please." The scanner beeped weakly, the door's mechanism clicking. Relief flooded him. He pushed the door open and stepped inside, locking it behind him with trembling fingers. The apartment was quiet, untouched. He flicked a light switch, nothing. The power was out, that was fine. He still had canned food, water in bottles, and maybe a flashlight somewhere. He moved into the living area, every muscle shaking, and let the metal rod clatter to the floor. He double-checked the door lock, then shoved a heavy wooden chair against it. He pressed his ear to the door. Silence, no pursuit. Finally, he exhaled. Logan collapsed onto the couch, breathing slowly, trying to will his heartbeat to calm. He'd made it. Somehow, against all odds, he'd outrun the apocalypse. He took out his earbuds and stared at them. The music had helped him survive by blocking out the screams and horror. But now, in the quiet of his apartment, he could still hear the memory of those screams. He could still smell blood and decay. Outside, the world was dying. He had no idea what tomorrow would bring. But he was alive tonight, and that had to be enough. He lay back, letting exhaustion claim him. The city howled somewhere far below. He shut his eyes, clutching the silence of these four walls like a lifeline.